What would happen if the Ghostface killer and the American Psycho, Patrick Bateman, happened to face each other in a battle to the death? Tonight we answer that very question. Which of these bloody New York terrorizers will rise above the other, and which will end up at the wrong end of a varying array of sharp objects? Through my handcrafted analysis system and a little narrative spice sprinkled at the end like a dash of nutmeg in our bloody hot cocoa, we will discover what would happen when a cruel maniac comes face to face with horror TikTok's favourite masked thirst trap. Who will be crowned our winner? Hello horror people, my name is Spookful, and let's get straight into this spooky battle. By the way, I'm planning on making this a series, so if you're interested, maybe consider subscribing, because I'll be posting more of these and you can keep up to them. But anyway, let's get on to the video. First, let's quickly outline how we will compare and pit our two body bag company ambassadors against one another. Okay, so, we'll first examine the stature and strength of both our contenders, whilst looking to see if any of them have any grave-filling tricks up their cute little rain-coated sleeves. Then we move on to what all our math teachers assumed our lives would eventually lead to, a cutthroat battle of intelligence, where we will review our spooky little gladiator's brain potential, to see who could come up with the best strategies for the ring. Could our senses-shortening contestants dominate a game of family Monopoly, or would they just end up eating the money pieces in the corner? Our last method of comparison comes down to the greatest feats of each of our duelists, where we will examine their oh-so-bloody careers like an overeager supermarket assistant manager, and find a set of 3 of their highlights, whether that be a grand defiance of odds, a stratagem too complex for our mere not-living-in movie brains to understand, or a time they ticked off someone from their to-murder list whilst looking impressively stylish whilst doing it. Finally, after all our studying ventures, we can settle down for story time, as I will attempt to paint a picture of how our horrific battle of horrors would play out in my opinion, where we will then crown our victor with this old Burger King crown I found outside my house. Real quick, this video was inspired by an old series by AZHY Mouse, made on Dead by Daylight killers, so if you have a hankering for some elimination by sunrise content, then go check them out. Also, spoiler warning for the movies on screen now. And now let's get right into what you all came here for. The battle. In any punching and slashing competition, it's hard to be victorious on intelligence alone. So let's look at how our two characters stack up in the brawn department, shall we? I feel like now it would be an important time to clarify that I'm counting the mask of Ghostface as its own character, not the goofy little people we see behind it. So in this category, we'll be looking at the people who played Ghostface behind the mask. So, on average, the Ghostface stunt doubles stand at 6 foot 1 inches according to Google. And we can see from this image that Ghostface is in decent athletic shape. They display what I would call an above average strength and stamina, especially when running whilst wearing a mask, which would knock me out after 15 seconds if I attempted it. Overall, Ghostface reps a physique I'd say similar to Sonic. Decent strength with lots of stamina and durability to boot. Now let's move on to our other fighter, Mr. Patrick Bateman, where for better or worse we have a lot more data. In his role as this adulterous, abnormally awful music fan, Christian Bale repped an impressive athletic physique possessing a well-crafted and well-rounded body suitable for the task of, well, murdering people. He also demanded I mention the lack of puffiness around his eyes, because apparently that is really important to him, so yeah. He wins in a battle of eye puffiness, I guess. This evil murderer and acquisitioner stands at 6 feet tall, which whilst on average would put him up for having worse height and range than Ghostface, I would say that he makes up for it by possessing larger strength and stamina. Although it is important to note that Ghostface does engage in some hand-on-hand fights throughout their career, being a regular Rocky Balboa, whereas Patty Bateman over here does not, instead opting to kill from surprise like a FNAF jump scare.
We've been trying to reach you concerning your car's extended warranty.
Next we move on into the brain zone to examine our competitors' intelligence and strategy skills, because to contradict the very last thing I just said, a big old muscly mech suit ain't much if the goblin controlling it just spends all day hitting rocks together. So let's start with the murderous misogynist Patrick Bateman this time. And here is where I propose my own lukewarm take to the crowd, which is that I think this Batman butcher's intelligence is a tad overrated. His golden brain booties have been polished for too long. Whilst he is able and intelligent enough to mask his emotions in some cases and cover up his murders somewhat, like in the same way sticking the body under the bed and leaving the feet hanging out is a style of covering up. As anyone who's watched the film knows, when he is meeting with our favourite Green Goblin detective, he often lets the mask slip and acts in suspicious ways. Like young me who climbed too high up in a tree, he often gives off the vibe of being a bit in over his head. But once again, to directly contradict what I just said, he does flex his big brain in other categories, specifically when it comes to manipulating people, and in his line of work. And whilst the first one isn't a good thing, he uses his charisma to lure in his victims before luring the heads off their bodies. So I would say that he overall possesses above average intelligence, but let's see if it's enough to rival our old ghosty friend, who like Patrick has some ups and downs in their strategic career. First of all, every Ghostface manages to get away with the murders until the very final act, so there must be some form of knowledge on the art of not leaving evidence on the scene of the crime. Whilst they also show patience and wisdom when it comes to scaring and ambushing their opponents, like your sweet aunt at the party who traps you in the corner to talk when all you wanted to do was grab a little tied up napkin at the end of a stick of food and hotfoot it out of there. But then Ghostface also has their goofy moments for sure, like the fact that they never think to stab Sydney more than once to finish a job, or that they let themselves get headshot by a vast array of items, from beer bottles to stairwell bikes. Honestly, they get pummeled so much I wouldn't be surprised if in Scream 7, a grand piano falls onto them scary movie style, and some little ducklings swim around in circles around their brain. Overall, I would say that both our involuntary blood removers have similar average intelligence, whilst both having their own tragic flaws, kind of like Hop from the movie Hop. Now let's move on to their respective impressive feats and accomplishments. Our first brutal feat of brutality for our favourite Father Death costume-clad killer takes place in the most recent franchise installment, where upon chasing our two heroes into a bodega, Ghostface is confronted by three men that for the sake of this video we will call Snap, Crackle and Pop. Except imagine if Pop had a shotgun, and they became roughly 78% bigger fans of punching than their serial counterparts. Despite this threat, the masked murderer swiftly manages to reduce all their life insurance activation dates to 5 seconds ago, whilst also showing off his quick-time event-level dodging skills in the process, where they flop out of frame to dodge an unhealthy portion of shotgun bullets coming their way. A mighty first blow from Ghostface, so let's see how Patrick can retaliate. Let's see, what his first feat is I had down here. Oh. Well, not as exciting, but still impressive. Patrick starts off each of his days by doing 1,000 stomach crunches, which he's very clearly proud of as he tells us it at the very start of his movie monologue ventures. Our second ghostly feat comes from the fifth movie, where in a very iconic and controversial scene among fans, Ghostface manages to take out and overpower our beloved Deputy Dewey. In this scene taking place in apparently the world's most empty hospital, our heroic knight of valor and ex-police sheriff Dewey manages to appear to get the upper hand on our cloaked companion, when he unloads 3 revolver bullets into their chest. However, when he returns to secure his kill, Monica from Friends gives him a call, and as Dewey's a big fan of the show, he takes his eye off the ball for one unfortunate life-ending second. Ghostface then rises up from the dead like a Halloween prop, and hits our protagonist with a 2-for-1 deal on fatal knife wounds, as he then, in a way that won't get me demonetized, reverse zips up Dewey's life sweater with enough force to lift our little hero off the floor and onto his little tippy toes, showing impressive levels of strength to overpower and lift our man of the hour. But Patrick Bateman refuses to go down easy, and snaps back with a second feat of his own, being the iconic murder of Paul Allen. After making Paul drink a little too much of Ryan Reynolds' Aviation American Gin drink, he dresses up in his snazziest little raincoat and equips his newly crafted Iron Axe, which he then uses, once again worded in a way that won't get me demonetized, to turn Paul's head into one of those 2016 watermelons that YouTubers put 500 rubber bands around. This skull-shattering feat shows both Patty Boy's brutality and physical strength, which would prove useful in a battle where the shattering of one's skull would be the eventual goal. Our third and final grand feat of Ghostface goes all the way back to Scream 5 again. I'm sorry, but the new CGI and effects just allow Ghostface's brutality to shine much more in the newer movies. But this time, we're going to talk about 5's opening scene, where whilst Tara Wednesday Carpenter does survive her spooky little encounter, Ghostface displays a hefty portion of brutality in their assault, both breaking Tara's leg by kicking it, to the determination to carry on after getting the door slammed on their arm, which looked like it really hurt, to the brutal stabbing through the bone of Tara's hand, which shows not only that Tara has impressively strong arm bones to keep her hand up with that amount of force coming down, but also then when Ghostface plays hard. If playing was committing terrible crimes against your friend group for very small or petty reasons. And last but not least, we bounce back to the face mask loving, very not loyal to their partner, Mr. Patrick Bateman, where we are looking at the stairwell chainsaw murder that takes place towards the end of the movie. After one of his intended victims discovers his past work, per se, she puts on her running boots and darts out the door, where a very naked, very inspired by Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Patrick Bateman, chases after her. But just as she looks to have escaped her fatal lumberjack encounter by running down the staircase, our unfortunate victim gets slapped in the face by secondary school physics' #1 favourite force, gravity.
Ah, gravity, thou art a heartless bitch.
With the assistance of Isaac Newton and some of those patented slasher movie killer hacks, our murderous businessman drops the still running chainsaw down the stairwell, directly onto our victim, taking her out instantly. This impressive feat of dropping demonstrates Mr. Bateman's calculated creativity, as well as how empty his apartment building must have been, because no one seemed to hear anything that was going on. Maybe SpongeBob was on and everyone was distracted by the titular sea creature's charisma, to not hear the screaming and door banging of an adult, followed by the revving of a machine-operated murder tool. Anyway, putting aside logical impossibilities, I think we have collected all the evidence we need to crown our winner. So please allow me to present a short story of how I would interpret our duel of psychopaths probably going down. Patrick Bateman stands clad in his favourite poncho in the hallway of a rich high-rise apartment building, his silky smooth skin lightly sprinkled with strawberry sauce. And in his hand he holds a chainsaw which is also covered in strawberry sauce. He stands in front of his latest victim, until he hears the familiar sound of the start of Carly Rae Jepsen's Call Me Maybe coming from their corpse. He picks up the old flip phone and answers stoically. He doesn't say a word before the eerie voice of Ghostface greets him.
Hello, Mr. Bateman. Or should I say Patrick? What's your favorite scary movie?
Patrick the fishing bait man 180-degree turns to see the caller stood behind him, Ghostface. As Patrick drops the phone, Ghostface too throws theirs to the side, as the two stare each other down. Patrick activates his stamina reserve he has stored up from all the fancy dinners, and charges at Ghostface wielding his chainsaw above his head. Ghostface quickly kicks down a door to their right and runs inside the room, as Patrick shortly follows. He stands looking around the empty room, as suddenly, inspired by Sully from Monsters Inc., Ghostface leaps out the closet behind Patrick and slashes his arm. This being the first time Patrick has received much damage from an attack, and the sight of his very expensive skincare routine going to waste, he screams and turns around and punches his masked attacker in the face, before dropping his jammed chainsaw and darting back into the corridor. In a frenzied rage, he breaks open a fire axe case with his fist, and grabs the weapon, as Ghostface emerges from the room, a little bit of strawberry sauce staining their mask from the blow they received. Staring Patrick down, silently, Patrick charges at the cloaked figure wielding his axe as Ghostface's battle experience comes into play. As they duck down dodging the attack, Patrick stumbles into the wall. Mr. Bateman turns around again and runs at Ghostface once more. As Ghostface does the same, Patrick brings the axe down, Ghostface the knife up. The sound of a body hitting the floor echoes through the corridor. The apartment lobby elevator doors ding open as a silhouette stands there, breathing heavily, and our winner, Ghostface, emerges from the elevator, blade in one hand and Patrick's head in the other.
He never stood a chance.
So yeah, I think Ghostface would win overall, as the great experience and the fact that they have faced victims who actually fight back really shines through in this battle. Who do you think should have won? Also, if you want, you can subscribe for the next episode where we'll see if Patrick Bateman can make a comeback where he faces off against the menu's Chef Slowick. Or if you just want more Scream content, my Stu Macker motive analysis is also on screen now. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time.
I'll be right back!